Hello and welcome to this week's Birth and Baby Talk. I'm Leanne Palmerston.
And I am Meaghan Grant.
And we are two owners, part owners of three different agencies across Ontario. And we're two of your four hosts of Birth and Baby Talk.
One of those weeks. Anybody else feeling like this is the week where you just hit a wall and you're ready to put your feet up and do nothing? Yeah, I'm there too.
Meaghan, I get to Wednesday of every week and think this is the week where I hit the wall. And then the next week comes and then I think I hit a new wall. This stuff is bananas. It's just bananas.
It is. And obviously it is having a huge impact on families right now. Not just people like us who are moms who are, navigating owning businesses and having clients and kids doing school from home and when was the last time I washed the masks and all of the other, details. Our clients are, and people who are expecting are reaching out to us because they are stuck.
Yes.
I remember, Leanne, I don't know what it was like for you. I know most of your birth story, but I don't know that I've ever heard this detail. But I remember when my second Miles was born, my mom took my first. And he went to Nana's house and he slept there for a couple of nights. Frankly, I'm not even sure he missed us, especially when he found out that the baby was a permanent fixture in the household. I think he was less than impressed with the entire situation, mostly because he wanted a sister, not a brother. And he was very, very adamant that it was a problem that Miles was a boy. But I had help. I had someone to reach out to. I had someone who they lived nearby. My child was familiar with them, and they were able to go there and have a safe, happy, fun couple of days while I did the hard part of having a baby and, beginning my recovery.
Yes.
That's right now.
That's right. When I had my second child, more than 13 years ago, I decided to opt for a home birth. So in part because then I didn't have to worry about where my first child went. I knew my partner would be able to be close to me and keep an eye on our other child. And I would have my mother and midwives around me. I had a doula. I had such a huge support network that I could rely on. But today, that's not happening for most people.
You're right. And it's definitely a challenge, as we see travel restrictions are only getting a little bit tighter now as we sort of wait for the vaccine rollout to really get going on the ground. And those travel restrictions are probably going to last, gosh, I hate saying this, but probably through the end of the year if we're being realistic. And that means that, that's nearly 2 years of pregnant people and expecting families sort of having their hands tied a little bit in terms of the type of support they can access, the type of people they can have with them, the types of births they can have. And it's really creating this complicating factor for a lot of families. And all of our agencies have always had sibling doula services, but I don't think we've ever had the demand for them that we've had in the last 6 months.
No, I mean, we've got the new variants are making people very nervous about expanding their bubbles outward. I mean, most people's parents, if you're having babies these days, even if you're 40, your parents are likely in their mid to late 60s or early 70s. So they very much might still have jobs that they're going to, or they're a little older and nobody wants to put their parents at any kind of risk, especially if, say you wake up in labor at 2 in the morning. Do you really want to call your 72-year-old mom and say, hey, mom, can you start driving from Ottawa down to Hamilton to take care of our child? Oh, yeah. And can you hurry up? Because I think I have to go to the hospital in an hour. What do you do? And if you're one of the amazing people who are a newer Canadian who maybe came here from Pakistan or Saudi Arabia and your entire family lives over in another continent, and you really don't know your neighbors super well because you're living in a fairly newly built area of the city where nobody really knows each other very well anymore. And maybe you do know your neighbors, but are you going to call your neighbors at 3 in the morning to say, hey, can you pop over and just hang out indefinitely with my kid? Like all of these things. Yeah, they're really complicated.
I know. I think about that. We've lived in our home for 4 years, and our next door neighbor on the one side, she's lovely, she's wonderful. Before her husband passed, he was lovely and wonderful. But I'll be honest, I don't know that I could tell you their names, so I'm probably not going to leave my kid with them. And even folks who, you know, have made other arrangements that are not their parents or their neighbors, you know, you've reached out to a good friend, godparents of your kids, that kind of thing. There's still lots of different things to try and juggle, because if they're your friends, chances are they also have kids. Those kids might be in in-person school. They might be in a daycare. You know, those parents might work in frontline positions. So a lot of the places and people you've reached out to in the past to help you when you have your second or third or fourth baby aren't available anymore. And that's where Sibling Doula comes in. As like I said, we've always had this service. It's been something that we have had requests for on occasion over, you know, the past, Leanne, 15 years, me, 8 years, you know, all of that. But it's definitely something we're seeing so much more right now as people look for alternatives to birthing alone or to only having a doula at their birth instead of their spouse. We've seen a lot of families who initially reach out to us for birth support, but when they realize that there's an alternative and they can still have their partner with them, that becomes a much better option for them because they want their partner there. It's their partner's baby too, you know? So knowing they have someone professional who's coming in, knowing the COVID protocols that all of our agencies have enacted to help keep our clients safe, you know, has really created this market and this option for new families, because you want to know that the person you're bringing in has been vetted, has a background check, has taken some training, and you want to be able to feel like you trust this person and that they're going to come when you call at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, for sure. And because, you know, you can call a friend, you can make an arrangement with a friend, but if their life is particularly complicated on that day, or they're just feeling like they also are stuck in hitting their wall, right? I think the idea of a sibling doula is really genius. Now, I can tell you, I've been practicing long enough that I've actually been to a couple of births where small children were present in hospitals. I literally had a second-time parent who had their 1.5-year-old in a stroller in the room during labor and delivery. And the one parent, the non-birthing parent, kept going over to the baby, and thank goodness that baby was really well behaved and super cool with like just chilling out in their stroller, because I can't imagine for myself as a parent something more sort of distracting. And very shortly after the last one I'm thinking of, the hospitals in our area made a very strong rule that there were no children at all allowed in labor delivery, that you had to make alternate arrangements, and only children over the age of 12 were allowed in the postpartum area.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it's pretty serious now. And it's obvious why having a child there can be disorienting for the child, but also can be a hazard for the medical staff, especially if there's an emergency going on. And it's certainly a distraction for the parents. So
I just keep laughing because, I mean, for most of our viewers, you all know my kids are doing virtual school this year. And I finally took my office back from my oldest because I was getting zero work done listening to my 5-year-old make explosion sounds the entire day throughout class when he's supposed to be paying attention. All I can picture in the back of my head right now is being in like a birth pool with him standing beside me going, and that would be the most frustrating thing in the world when you're trying to give birth. So, you know, I can totally see you. And listen, there are definitely people out there who having their children there at a home birth in particular can be wonderful. It can be, you know, we've met people over the years. Like, I was a child and I attended my mom giving birth to my baby brother. And that was, you know, what started me on my doula journey. There are absolutely positive examples of that. But most birthing families want an alternative. Most people who are expecting to give birth in the next few months are not looking to have their older child hanging around. They're looking for a safe, secure, professional alternative to taking care of their child. Now, yes. What does having a sibling doula look like? Because it's obviously different from in-person support, but there are a lot of things that are the same. So if you're a previous client of ours and you're coming back because it's time for baby number 2, but you got a childcare issue with baby number 1, you know, you are going to see a lot of similarities to our in-person birth package. You're still going to get 2 prenatal visits. And I will be honest, these are the only prenatal visits we are actually still doing in person because it is a little too hard for kids to get to know a doula over a screen. And we recognize that it's a bit different for adults. We are maybe zoomed out, but we are all used to Zoom. Kids are not, especially younger ones. So our doulas are going in and they're getting down on the floor and they're playing with your child and they're reading the books and they're making them a snack and they're having fun in that sort of hour meeting so that when you do go into labor, if it is 3 o'clock in the morning, when your child wakes up in the morning, it's not this scary face they've never seen before. It's someone they associate with like a really fun day. We're gonna have a blast today. And so the doulas are coming in. It's still a team of 2 doulas. Each of them is doing a prenatal visit. That way you get that comprehensive on-call coverage. You're never risking bringing in a stranger. You know it's a doula from your team. So many similarities to our birth package. But we don't go to the hospital. We're really, even if you're having a home birth, we have people who have hired us as sibling doulas for their home birth for a couple of reasons. One, they don't want explosion sound in their ear while they're trying to work through a contraction. And B, because sometimes home births have to transfer. And they didn't want to be scrambling if they needed to transfer to a hospital.
Yeah.
So they have us come in. We're not there to squeeze your hips in that scenario. We're not there to wipe your forehead or make sure you've got a drink. We're there to give 100% focus to your older child so that your partner, your midwives, if you have a birth doula there, they can all focus on you. But the whole point of the sibling doula is to take that stress off of you, off of your partner, and really have a solid plan no matter what happens over the course of your labor.
And at Hamilton, we are a tiny bit different, but also pretty much the same. We have one dedicated doula for each family who has a sibling doula. That doula does have a 1 hour to 90 minute visit with the family so that they can get to know the child, spend some quality time with them, and also get to know the family's routines, where the food is, what kinds of foods that their child likes, and where, any supplies are that they might need, the clothes, where the kid's room is, how the bedtime routines work in case, the doula needs to be there across bedtime, or if the doula is going to be hanging out during the day, like what are the rhythms of that family? Does the child have a nap time in the morning? Are they allowed to watch TV or not? Like all of those are things that the doula is going to go through. And then the cool thing is, they're on call just like a birth doula. So when it is time to go into labor, the family just calls their sibling doula and says, hey, I think, we're going to need you in the next hour or so. Can you please come in? And then the doula can come. And if if it's in the middle of the night, then the doula is there to make sure that the child is taken care of in case they wake up overnight, and then be there in the morning to start taking care of them for the day. If it's at any other time, of course, they can come over and immediately start taking over care and giving meals and playing and hanging out. And then, of course, they understand the birth process, so they can make what's going on with the parents more accessible for the child and less scary. Because for some children, they're excited. Maybe they don't even know what's going on. They might be oblivious. Other kids might be hearing the birthing parent like making strange noises or acting a little different than normal. And that sibling doula can make that seem less scary for the child, which is so important, because we want to help, build that excitement that new sibling is going to have for the baby when it comes home or is introduced to them for the first time.
For sure. Absolutely. And the other thing to keep in mind with kids is, for a lot of these kids, especially now, in the past, you've been able to do like practice sleepovers and, spending an afternoon at the other house. People aren't doing that anymore. So it's a lot easier for younger kids in particular that they get to wake up in their own bed, that they get to eat in their own kitchen. They're playing with their own toys. They don't have to be in a new environment on top of not having their parents there. And in a year when there's a lot less daycare and preschool and visits with grandma, there's less opportunities for, especially sort of like the 3 and under crowd. There's a lot more opportunities to spend time not with their parents at the moment. I mean, my 5 and 8-year-old are never out of my sight. And so, so for a 3-year-old who hasn't really had an opportunity to be out of their parents' sort of supervision for extended periods of time, the idea of, getting in a car at 3 o'clock in the morning while, a parent sits in the front seat, clearly uncomfortable, if not, a little worried, and then not having your parents there for 24 hours is definitely challenging for a lot of kids and can be frustrating and can be scary. And so the beauty of having the sibling doula come in is everything else stays the same for your child. The only thing that's different on that day is who the caregiver is, but they've met the caregiver. And the caregiver has the plans and has the routines and has the information. And as doulas, it's our job to follow what is right for your family. So, I mean, how many of us have found grandparents who are like, oh, well, you didn't sit rear facing until you were 2 years old, so I'm going to turn the car seat around, as Leanne says. We've all seen this. We've all seen grandparents who think they know best because that was the way things were done when they had kids. And so sometimes parent suggestions and requests are not necessarily, I'm trying really delicately to say this,
sometimes they're just a little behind the times, and sometimes they just want to put their foot down because they like to be in a little bit of control. And as a grandparent, you don't get as much control as you did when you were a parent. And if you are a parent who is like, oh, I love my parents and they're amazing, but I don't necessarily want them taking care of my kid all the time, then a sibling doula is a fantastic opportunity for you to create some continuity for your child, while also having like that fun. I always think of it, it's like day camp, right? It's like an opportunity to go to camp for the day, but at home with all of your normal stuff. And, and then when the birth is over, right, then the non-birthing partners, so which is a lot of times dad or the other mom, get to come home and hang out with their little one until it's time to go pick up mom from the hospital and bring mom and the baby back home for good. So yeah, there's just, I think it's such an elegant solution, and I don't know why it's not more widely known, because I do get a lot of parents calling and saying, do you have any idea of like a nanny agency or a special babysitting service, and I say, hold up, I've got the perfect solution for you. They're so relieved.
Absolutely. The other sort of the last thing we'll talk about with sibling doulas is that they are there as resources for you too. Now, keep in mind, they are not there as your birth doula, so they're not going to talk to you about, you know, contraction patterns and that kind of thing. But they are there to give you suggestions on ways of making this transition easier for your child, on ways of setting up your home to when you're going to be home with, you know, an older child and a new baby. So there's lots of things that change when you bring a new baby home that are different from the first time around. You now have two small people to take care of. And while one is probably a slightly better communicator than the baby, they're still maybe not the best communicators in the world. And so you really need to learn how to manage and juggle. And so that's something that the sibling doulas can give some advice about. Now, we're not going to go into those tips today, in part because I could probably talk for like 10 hours on tips of making this easier for babies. So what we have actually done is come back at the end of April, the last 2 weeks in April. The first one, I'm going to be talking about tips on introducing new siblings and making that transition easier for the 5 and under crowd. So for your younger kids that haven't gone into sort of like grade 1 yet, even if they started school, but it's not like that formal education. And then the week following, I'm going to be talking about what to do with the 5 to 10 crowd. Now, I'm not going to talk about 10 and up because then you get into teenage hormones and all kinds of other stuff. And I'm not that expert.
We all have to do it.
Like 8 years when I've been through it a couple of times. But this is something I'm passionate about because I remember bringing my second home and my first, I'm not even kidding when I say he was furious that he got a brother instead of a sister. He was very, very mad about this. So we actually had to do a lot of work in those first couple of weeks on creating sort of a new family dynamic and integrating our older child into the help and the care and the feeding and all of that so that he didn't feel left out. So this is something that I love talking about because there is a way to do it, not perfectly. You're always going to have hiccups. There's going to be bumps in the road, all of those, you know, metaphors, but there are ways to make it easier and there are ways to make the transition smoother.
It's a big leap. I always hear people say like it's a really big leap when you go from 1 to 2 and then a huge leap when you go from 2 to 3. So hearing your tips on how to make those transitions smoother on both sides of the aisle, kids and parents, that's going to be a super valuable show. So if you're watching this show, make sure you come back, check out our schedule, and you can check out our schedule on our newsletter. We give everybody a heads up of what's coming up the next week. That goes out every Thursday morning. Unless the staff hits a really hard wall and they really need to take a few days, forgive us. But yeah, it comes out on Thursday mornings. And the really awesome thing is every couple of newsletters, we include a printable. We have information for you to supplement what we have here. And we provide a special coupon. And this month's coupon is $100 off any service at any of our agencies of $1,000 or more. So if you're looking for a birth doula or you're looking for postpartum support, you're going to want to get on the newsletter so you can use the special code.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. We will make sure we drop the link to our newsletter in the comments below. If you have any questions about today's topic, please feel free to reach out to any of our agencies and to run through them again for everybody. That is Toronto Family Doulas, Hamilton Family Doulas, and Family Doulas of Ottawa. All 3 of our agencies offer this service, and we are happy to talk about how we can support your family. If you are not on our newsletter, if you're not following along with us on social media, make sure you do that so you can see all of our upcoming episodes. And if there is a topic you want us to talk about, we want to hear from you. The whole point of us doing these episodes is really to give parents and expectant individuals tools and information and resources. So if there's something you need, something you're looking for, something you want to learn about, let us know and we will make that happen. We want this to be a resource for you to reach out to when you need information.
On that note, someone a couple weeks ago did actually request a special topic. They wanted to know about gas in babies. So at the beginning of April, I'm going to be talking about gas, burps, and farts.
And you and I have a different perspective on this topic.
We kind of do.
Leanne and I get into the debate about burps on a regular basis. About once a year, we get into that debate. So you definitely want to join us for that. That is something, I mean, we hear from our clients all the time about, you know, my baby is gassy or my baby's tummy is hurting. So that will also be an episode you do not want to miss. I'm so excited. I love hearing that people have reached out and requested topics, because that is when this is the most valuable for everybody.
And what are you talking about next week, Meaghan?
It's not me next week, is it? Maybe it is. I know that at the end of the month, I am talking with a photographer about family photos. Specifically, I want to talk about putting together outfits, because, you know, all of these family pictures that are out there that everybody looks so cute and put together, I'm not going to lie, that is not my family. That is not my strong suit. So, you know, it's something that a lot of families aren't really sure about, and a lot of photographers are really happy to talk about. So we are hopefully going to have a photographer with us to chat about ways to make sure you get sort of the family pictures you want and how to plan your outfits for that. I don't remember what next week is.
Next week, we're talking about, yep, you're back.
Oh!
We're talking about 1 year later.
That's right. It's the 1 year anniversary of like the whole world shutting down. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot because I was supposed to be talking about March break in COVID. But obviously for those of you that are parents in Ontario, you know that it's not that March break anymore, or the week afterwards, it's not March break. So we sort of had to change that around. But I also realized that March 10th is 4 days before the 1 year anniversary, everything shutting down, the 2-week March break extension that never really ended. So I wanted to have just sort of a quick overview about what the last year has looked like for the world, for us as people, for us as doulas and doula agencies, and what it's meant for expectant families and for new parents. Yep. So we are going to be doing a bit of a year in review. It will probably be snarky and sassy, because I think that's how we're all feeling about the past year at this point. So yes, we are doing a year in review next week. I'm very excited about that. And then I think Meaghan is doing the week following, or Alex is doing the week following. She's talking about tips with twins. You're doing, how many weeks are there in March, Leanne?
There's actually 5 of them. So next week, you're going to be talking about a year in review. The week after, I'm going to be introducing folks to baby-led weaning. Yay! One of my favorite topics. And then Alex will be joining us the week after to talk about specific tips for thriving when you have twins.
There we go. Now there's the schedule. Everybody, I can't keep a calendar in my head.
So make sure you come back and join us, folks, every Wednesday at noon here on Birth and Baby Talk. And then we post immediately afterwards, the next day, we post on YouTube. So you can always find our back episodes on our Birth and Baby Talk channel on YouTube. Thanks again for spending your time with us. We hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.